everyone, my name is Max and today I'm here with 10 5-star predictions. So I was a little resistant going into a video like this because I think it is a bold statement and I think it leads to a lot of disappointment and not regret, but just kind of feeling worse about a book because you went in with such high expectations. But then I watched Jade from JD Ray Reads' 5-star predictions and it just kind of got me inspired, and I kind of thought about it and I looked at the books that I owned and like books on my Goodreads TBR, and I realized that I think I can hopefully with confidence say that I truly think that these are going to be 5-star predictions. A couple of them are sequels, quite a lot of them are the first books in series, and just a few are not fantasy, and a couple of them I don't have, so I will just be speaking about them, but let's get into the ones that I actually own. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about will come as no surprise to anyone who's a fantasy lover, and that is Rhythm of War by Brandon Sanderson. This is the 4th book of the Stormlight Archive series, which I think is going to be like a 13-book series. This is the 2nd. I just don't own the 4th one yet as it hasn't come out. This is the only one I'm talking about that hasn't come out yet. I just know for certain that it's going to be a 5-star, so why not just put one on here that I'm at least not going to disappoint myself with, because it's like impossible for me to not give Brandon Sanderson 5 stars. To be honest. This is a series that follows a large group of characters from all sorts of places in this world. We follow nobles, we follow slaves, we follow the prince and the king, and it is in this world where many centuries ago there was kind of this reckoning, and these people who were kind of like gods almost deserted the world, and there was a prophecy that said that because they deserted, one day the world was gonna end. And in the first book we follow 4 main characters. One is destined to save the world, one is destined to destroy it. We follow the uncle of the king, we follow a noblewoman who is kind of a spy trying to steal something for her family, we follow a healer turned slave slash soldier, and we follow an assassin in white who weeps as he kills. It's an amazing series. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'm in the middle of rereading the series. So Oathbringer, the 3rd one, could have been on here, but I'm not counting rereads. And so I am planning on reading that in November and then starting Rhythm of War as soon as I get it. But it is for sure going to be a 5 out of 5 stars. Now the next one is a series, but I'm just putting them as one, and that is the Lord of the Rings series. The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, and The Return of the King. You know, it's kind of like every fantasy lover just has to assume that they're going to give this series 5 stars. I absolutely loved the movies and I really enjoyed The Hobbit. So I'm really hoping that through these 3 quite chunky books, I'm going to absolutely fall in love with The Lord of the Rings. It's one of those that I'm not as certain as Rhythm of War, but I am quite certain just because it is an iconic classic fantasy series, and I don't think I know anyone who enjoys fantasy and loves fantasy that hasn't liked this. Like, yes, I think people who aren't readers and just liked the movie so they decided to pick up the books probably won't like this. I know there's a lot of travel time and them just like walking to a place, but honestly, give me all of that. I'm such a big fan of that stuff and I don't know why. I think it just kind of builds anticipation more and more when if something is just super fast and all happens in one, it just kind of leaves me feeling not super fulfilled and just wanting more. And I'm really hoping that this trilogy does it. I am participating in the Tolkien Along, which I'm going to be reading The Fellowship of the Ring in October, Two Towers in November, and The Return of the King in December. I'm very excited to finally read this trilogy, and I'm almost quite sure that I'm going to be giving all of them, or the series as a whole, 5 stars. The next book is one that I've talked about a couple times on my channel, and that is Kings of the Wyld by Nicholas Eames. This is kind of like D&D, but in book form. That's what I hear, is that each character represents a D&D character, so the paladin, the rogue, the druid, and everything. And it's about these men who are kind of past their prime but are very famous in this world, and then an ex-bandmate shows up asking our main character for his help and they get back together. The tagline is "The boys are back in town," which is a bad tagline, but Pierre Ford and I have very similar fantasy tastes, and she loved this, so I'm really hoping to enjoy it as well. The next one is honestly one that I haven't heard anything about, but it just is very reminiscent of Ruin of Kings for me, and I don't know why, but I absolutely loved that one, so I'm really hoping to enjoy Spine of the Dragon by Kevin J. Anderson. I have heard of this author before, and I've heard amazing things. I just haven't heard anything about this book, and I'm just hoping to love it. This is a world where the god Kur created two races, the Wraths and humans, to serve the Wraths, and he created them to destroy a dragon. Well, they're able to do it, and the Wraths disappear, and thousands of years later, the Wraths and the dragon are myth, but the Wraths are back, and they want the humans to be their slaves again. This sounds right up my alley. I love dragons, I love other types of creatures and other types of races. I'm really excited to see what happens here. Alright, so the next book is kind of along the same lines as The Spine of the Dragon, and that is The Dragon Bone Chair, but I have heard numerous things about Tad Williams, and I just know that he's a very prolific, very famous fantasy author. This is a book where the king is dying, and this elven king decides to rise up to take back his crown, and I think it's again an interspecies war, and I think like a servant is our main character who is sent on quests to find like the salvation or to get hope or something goes on. All the covers honestly kind of suck. They all look basically like this with the sword, and I'm a little bit disappointed in that. I wish it was a more fun, more intriguing cover. I saw the spine and I saw the sword and it said the Dragon Bone Chair, so I was intrigued, but the cover kind of sucks. But I am hoping this is another huge fantasy trilogy that I love. The next book is one I've talked about quite a lot on my channel, and it was on my October TBR, but I think I'm going to have to change it for an arc that I got of Andrei Sapkowski's new book, which I wanted to put on the 5-star predictions, but with how his last 2 books in the Witcher series went, I am hopeful that it'll be 5 stars, but I have my doubts and I'm wary. So the book that I'm going to be talking about is The Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. If you've been watching any videos of mine recently, you will know about this book and how excited I am. All I really know about this book and all I want to know is that this is about a main character who finds out he has an illegal sort of magic, and it just sets off this huge chain of events. I've heard good things. Honestly, I haven't heard that many things. I know people like own this trilogy, but not a lot of people have read it. But it's a huge fantasy trilogy, and I'm just so into it, and I'm so excited to pick this up. Probably in November, sadly. And then for the last book that I own, I'm going with another sequel, and that is Kingdom of Copper by S.A. Chakraborty. I loved The City of Brass when I read it, and I am planning on rereading it in October, but I just know that I'm going to love this. I absolutely adored the first one, and I've heard from everyone that the series just gets better. Now that all 3 books are out, I can say with some certainty that it's going to be a great trilogy, because everyone seems to just love it more and more as the books go on. Everyone seems to be really satisfied, even though, like, yeah, I'm sure characters will die. I'm sure it doesn't all end in sunshine and roses, but I have heard that it ends well, wrapped up, and it feels very satisfying. And that's all I want in books, you know? I just want to feel satisfied, even if they're heartbreaking, even if they break me, or they make me laugh or cry or happy, sad, angry. I just want to feel satisfied. And I'm really excited for this one. This is about a woman in ancient Egypt who's a con woman, and she accidentally summons a djinn. He then proceeds to take her to this magical city, which our other point of view is the prince of that city. I hear that the prince has great character development throughout the series, which is great because he wasn't my favorite if I remember correctly, but I love our main character Nari, and I cannot wait to continue. All right, and now on to books that I do not own. One I did, but I was moving back home, and it's a huge book, and I ended up giving it up, which I regret, and that is The Wise Man's Fear by Patrick Rothfuss. I read The Name of the Wind back in my sophomore year of college and did really enjoy it, and I knew I'd like The Wise Man's Fear, and I started it for Tome Topple couple years ago, and I got through half of it. I got 500 pages through the 1,000-page book, but then I just ended up putting it down. It was taking me super long, and I was in the middle of a readathon, so I just put it down and I never picked it back up. I'm pretty sure that once I start it again, it is going to be from the beginning, because all I remember is where I stopped. He was apprenticing for this person, and even then I don't remember that much. And another reason, I know I'm going to love it because everyone loves it, but I have found throughout my reading career and when I've been reading these past few years that contrary to popular opinion, I don't really like a school setting. It feels very overdone. I don't like, because most of the time it's like our main character is super friggin' poor, as though they're picked on all the time because they're the scholarship kid. I've read this in Name of the Wind, in The Poppy War. I'm just a little sick of this story. Hot take, but I was really enjoying The Wise Man's Fear as I was reading it, so I'm sure I'm going to like it. I probably won't pick it up till it's closer to the release date of the third one, not that anyone knows what that is, but I don't want to read it now and then have forgotten everything and having to reread it when the third one comes out. So now I'm just going to hold off until it gets closer to that supposed release date, and then I'll be able to see if it's a 5 stars or not. Next book is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I have heard great things about this book. You know, she's very influential. If you don't know who Michelle Obama was, she was the first lady of Barack Obama, who was our previous president before President Trump, and this is kind of her memoir from when she's young till the end of being First Lady, I believe. I've heard amazing things. Honestly, I hadn't heard really anyone talk about it until Kevin from The Irish Reader and Reagan from Prue's Project recently read it, and both enjoyed it. So I do think I'm going to love it. This was one of my top rated books on Goodreads, and so I think that when I pick it up, I am going to really like it. And I hear that the audiobook is narrated by her, so I'm sure that when I pick it up, it'll be as the audiobook. And then the last book that I'm going to be talking about, my 10th book for my 5-star predictions, is The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Again, people have been reading this recently and I've heard amazing things. I've heard great things about TJ Klune in general, but I've heard this book is just phenomenal. This is about a orphanage of magical kids, and this, like, I want to say like FBI agent person, or maybe like social services guy, is sent to kind of spy on them and report back about how these magical children are doing under the guise of making sure that they're being well taken care of. But I know that there is a romance between the agent and the guy who's taking care of the kids, and I think the agent kind of learns more about acceptance and bigotry and how the world isn't perfect because these magical kids are frowned upon by society. And I think that it's just a really heartwarming story. I know Reagan from Prue's Project cried while reading it. That's what I want, crying from how sweet it is. And I am really excited to pick it up. Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching. Please let me know if you found any of these books to be 5 stars, or maybe your worst books of all time. Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you soon with another video. Bye!